The Galactic Security Councils. Emergency broadcast cut through every comm channel on Station Helix 7. Critical evacuation failure, 4 Vexian. Death Cubs in defensive formation. Central hub, human refusing evacuation. Protocols repeat, human will not leave. Her lunch, Station Commander Jetero's secondary heart stopped functioning. 4 Death Cubs, 4, the galaxy's apex. Predators, the living extinction events that had wiped out 17 civilizations before the Vraxians finally contained them to their home world. 1 cub could slaughter 50 armed soldiers before its first meal. 4 cubs together meant planetary sterilization protocols, and they were guarding a backpack. Jetita sprinted to the central hub's observation deck, his command staff scrambling behind him. The viewport revealed a scene that violated every principle of xenobiology he'd studied in his 40 years of service. The cubs, each the size of a Terran lion, covered obsidian black scales that shimmered with bioluminescent warning patterns, sat in perfect defensive formation. Around a worn purple backpack, their 6 eyes tracked every movement in the hub. With predatory precision, their razor-lined moss dripped with a paralytic venom that had ended countless species, and in the center of this circle of death, cross-legged on the floor, sat a human female eating a sandwich. Someone explain this to me, Jetita said, his voice remarkably steady. Considering his species' panic, pheromones were currently triggering every alarm in the observation deck. Explain how those cubs aren't ripping her apart, sir. She won't leave. Security Chief Zilia pulled up the comm log. We've ordered evacuation 17 times. She says she's on her lunch break, and she packed this sandwich specifically. And she's not wasting it. The human designation showed her name as Ava. Occupation teacher took another bite and waved cheerfully at the observation deck. One of the cubs growled a sound that made the reinforced viewport vibrate. The human reached over without looking and scratched behind what Jetaro assumed were its auditory receptors. The cub leaned into her touch, its threat display dimming. That's not possible, Jetita whispered. Death cubs don't have social behaviors. They don't respond to touch. They certainly don't. He watched in horror as the cub made a sound suspiciously like a purr. They don't enjoy physical contact, sir. We have 10,000 inhabitants trapped in their quarters, Zelia said. The cubs won't let anyone pass through the hub, but they also won't leave. They're just sitting there guarding her bag. Why her bag? What's in it? She says. It's her work supplies, sir. Nothing dangerous. Security scanned it before she entered the station. Children's books, writing implements, some kind of Terran food items. Jiro pulled up the security footage from 20 minutes earlier. The timestamp showed Ava sitting in the same spot unpacking her lunch. 2 station thugs, career criminals who'd been on the watch list, approached her. One reached for the purple backpack. Then the cubs were simply there. No portal signatures, no transportation traces. They materialized from nothing, already in defensive formation, already positioned between the thieves and the bag. The thieves ran. Smart choice. Ava had looked at the cubs, said something the audio didn't catch, and continued eating her sandwich. Get me galactic wildlife emergency division, Jetero ordered, and someone tell tactical to stay back. If we spook those cubs, they'll kill everyone in a 500 m radius, sir. She's waving at us again. Jetero looked. Human was indeed waving, then pointing. At her wrist, some kind of Terran. Timekeeping gesture, she called out her voice carrying through the comm system. Someone had foolishly left open, "Hey, I blocking foot traffic, I can move if. This is a bad spot. I've got like 10 minutes left on my break though, one of." The cub shifted, placing itself more firmly between Ava and the observation deck. She thinks she's blocking foot traffic, Jita said faintly. There are 4 death cubs creating a no approach zone that's paralyzed an entire station. And she thinks she's being inconsiderate about foot traffic, his comm chirped. Chief xenozoologist where Hill's voice came through already sharp with professional concern. "I'm seeing the feed, I'm on my way, and you don't let anyone do anything stupid. If those cubs decide she's threatened, they'll reduce your station to component atoms. Why aren't they killing her? She's right. Their human scent should trigger their hunting response." "I don't know," Hills said. "That's why I'm coming. Because what I'm seeing is impossible, and I need to understand why it's happening." Anyway, Jetro watched as Ava finished her sandwich, carefully folded the wrapping and tucked it into a side pocket of her backpack. One of the cubs nudged the backpack closer to her with its snout. She patted its head absently. "Hurry," Chitao told our Hill, "because I think impossible just became our new normal." Hill arrived in 12 minutes, which was 8 minutes faster than theoretically possible. He burst onto the observation deck carrying enough sedation equipment to drop a small army. Took one look at the scene below and dropped everything. "That's not happening," he said flatly. "And yet it is," Jita replied. Rail pressed his sensory appendages against the viewport, his scientific instruments already scanning. "Death cubs are obligate carnivores with a hunting response triggered by endothermic signatures. Humans run hot, hotter than most species. She should register as prey, premium prey. They should have attacked her before they even fully materialized." Below, Ava had pulled out what appeared to be a data tablet and was showing something on the screen to the nearest cub. The cub tilted its massive head, its 6 eyes focusing on the display. "Is she showing it pictures?" Zelaya asked. "Those are human juveniles," or Hill said, his instruments translating the images. "Earth children. She's showing a death cub photographs of young humans. Why would she do that? More importantly," Jitoro cut in, "why is it looking death? Cubs don't have cognitive recognition. They operate on pure instinct, hunt, kill, consume, defend territory. They don't observe." Ava's voice drifted through the comm. "This is Marcus. He's learning multiplication. And this is Sophie. She's really good at drawing." "Oh, and this little guy is Ben," he asks. "A lot of questions, but that's how you learn, right?" The cub made a low, rumbling sound. Did that cub just vocalize non-aggressively? Our Hell's instruments clattered to the floor. "That's not in their behavioral repertoire. They have 3 sounds: threat, growl, attack, shriek, and feeding. Snarl. That's it. That sound doesn't exist in Braxian biology." "She's talking to it like it understands language," Zelia observed. "It doesn't. They don't. Death cubs have no language centers, no communication structures beyond pheromone-based territory marking. She might as well be talking to a real." Stopped. Pull up the security footage again the moment the cubs appeared. Jetero complied. They watched frame by frame as the 2 thieves reached for Ava's backpack, watched as reality seemed to fold and 4 death cubs stood where nothing had been. "Those criminals," or Hill said slowly, They were reaching. For her bag, not her, the bag, correct. Death cubs don't guard objects, they're not pack animals, they don't form attachments, they don't protect anything. Except their feeding territory, and even then only while actively consuming prey. Rahil's voice took on the desperate edge of a scientist watching his life's work dissolve. This violates everything we know about Vraxian biology. Should we attempt sedation? Jotaro asked. Let me try. Rail grabbed a long-range tranquilizer rifle loaded with enough sedative to drop a cargo hauler. He took careful aim at the smallest cub, still large enough to kill everyone on the observation deck, and fired. The dart never reached its target without breaking eye contact with Ava's tablet. The cub's tail whipped up and batted the dart aside. The movement was casual, reflexive, like a human swatting at an insect. They detected a subsonic projectile and intercepted it without visual confirmation, or Hill said numbly. That's not instinct, that's cognitive threat assessment. Ava looked up at the observation deck, frowning. Did someone just shoot at them? That's not cool. They're not bothering anyone, not bothering. Jotaro had to manually override his panic response. You're surrounded by the galaxy's most lethal predators. They're just sitting here. Ava pulled something from her backpack. A small container. She opened it, revealing some kind of Terran food item. Small orange fish-shaped. Want some? Goldfish crackers. They're pretty good. She held one out to the nearest cub. Cub leaned forward, delicately took the cracker from her palm and ate it. Rail made a sound like a dying engine. No. No, death cubs are obligate carnivores. Their digestive systems can't process plant matter. It should be rejecting that food violently, possibly killing her for offering poison. The cub ate another cracker. She's feeding them snacks, Xylia whispered. Children's snacks. I'm a teacher, Ava called up. Apparently having excellent hearing. I always have snacks. Kids get cranky when they're hungry. She patted the cub's head. Same with these guys, probably. They're not children, shouted his professional composure completely shattered. They're apex predators. Extinction-level threats. They've ended civilizations. They showed up when those mean guys tried to take my bag, Ava said. Reasonably, they're protecting me. That's pretty nice of them. Jotaro's comm exploded with incoming priority signals. He answered the one marked with Vraxian home world identification codes. Warchief Korvax appeared on the screen, his battle scars prominent even through the holographic display. I'm seeing reports that 4 of our death cubs have manifested off-world. This is impossible. Cubs can't survive outside Vexraxia's specific atmospheric composition. They die within minutes of exposure to standard galactic environments. They're not dying, Chitaro said, turning the screen toward the viewport. Korvax went silent. His weapon-hardened features cycled through 17 different expressions of disbelief. Those are adolescent cubs, stage 3 development. They should be in the middle of their killing frenzy phase. That phase lasts 3 years. During that time, they attack everything that moves, and most things that don't. The human is moving quite a bit, Jotaro noted. Why isn't she dead? We were hoping you could tell us. Korvax leaned closer to his screen. Is she petting one? She's been doing that for 23 minutes now. Get me transport to your station. Emergency. Speed. I need to see this myself. Korvax paused and contact the galactic Council, if death cubs have learned to bond with humans, we need to rewrite every emergency protocol in the galaxy. Below, Ava checked her wrist again and stood up, brushing crumbs off her clothing. The cubs immediately rose with her, maintaining their defensive formation. Okay guys, I need to get going, she said. I've got algebra to teach in like 15 minutes. The cubs didn't move. You can't come with me to class. No pets allowed in the teaching wing. The largest cub, easily 300 kg of armored killing machine, made a sound that Rahil's instruments registered as plaintive. Oh, don't give me that look. Ava laughed. You'll be fine. Go back to wherever you came from. I'll see you around, okay? She picked up her backpack. All 4 cubs tensed, their bioluminescent patterns flaring to maximum threat display. She's leaving. Jotaro said they're not going to let her leave with that bag. But Ava just slung the backpack over her shoulder, gave each cub one more scratch behind their auditory receptors, and started walking toward the exit corridor. The cubs watched her go there, threat displays flickering uncertainly. She waved without turning around. Be good. The cubs sat back down in perfect formation, now guarding the empty space where the backpack had been. What? Rail said. Are they doing? I think. Xylia said slowly. They're waiting for her to come back. The cubs sat in the central hub for 47 minutes, unmoving, while the galaxy's foremost xenobiological experts descended on Station Helix 7 like a swarm of very confused academics. Our hill had called in everyone. Vraxian xenobiologists materialized via emergency transport, their instruments already scanning before their molecules fully solidified. A pack of crystalline behavioral specialists arrived, their faceted bodies refracting light in patterns that indicated extreme professional distress. Even the notoriously reclusive Thoughtwa weavers sent a representative, which meant this situation had achieved civilizational paradigm shift status. They're still there, Jotaro reported as the observation deck became uncomfortably crowded with scientists. They haven't moved. They're just waiting. Waiting for what? Demanded lead Vraxian xenobiologist Thesarin, who'd written the definitive text on Death Cub behavior. They don't wait. They don't have patience. They exist in a constant state of predatory aggression. They're waiting for the human to return. Our Hill said. Death cubs don't form attachments. They're biologically incapable of. The Zarin stopped as one of the cubs lifted its head, tracking something in the distance. Its bioluminescent patterns shifted to a color our Hill's instruments had never recorded before. Soft, almost hopeful. Ava walked back into the hub carrying her now empty backpack. All 4 cubs surged to their feet, their threat displays blooming into what looked disturbingly like excitement. Oh my God, Hill whispered. They're happy to see her. Impossible, Thesarin said. Death cubs don't experience positive emotions. They experience hunger, aggression, and territorial imperative. That's the complete list. Ava knelt down and the cubs crowded around her like Jotaro struggled for a comparison like Terran domestic animals greeting their human caretaker. Hey guys, Ava said, laughing as one cub nearly knocked her over with enthusiasm. Miss me? I was gone for like 20 minutes. She's talking to them again, Zelia noted. Unnecessarily. Of course she is. Jotaro muttered. Why would she stop doing the impossible thing? Ava pulled out her tablet again. Okay, so I need to explain something. You can't just stay here forever. This is a busy station. People need to walk through here. The cub sat, their 6 eyes fixed on her. With unsettling focus, are they understanding her? One of the crystalline specialists chimed there. Voice like wind through crystal formations. They don't understand language, Thex. Aaron insisted, but his voice had lost its certainty. They can't. They don't have the neural architecture. Ava held up one finger. One, you're very good at protecting things. She held up a second finger. 2, I really appreciate that you helped me earlier. A third finger. 3, but you need to go home now. Your families are probably worried. The largest cub made that plaintive sound again. I know, Ava said, her tone exactly the same as when she'd spoken about her students. But you can't stay here. Tell you what, if you promise to go home and be good, I'll come visit sometime. Deal? The cub tilted its head. She's negotiating with them, Rill said faintly. She's treating this like a behavioral management situation with young students. It's working, Zelaya added. Xenopsychologist Sinara arrived in a rush of motion, her analytical instruments already deployed. She was the galaxy's leading expert in cross-species psychological bonds, and her reputation was built on the principle that emotional connections required evolutionary compatibility. She took one look at the scene, and her instruments clattered to the floor. No, she said. No, this violates every principle of xenopsychology. Death cubs bond through combat dominance and fear response. They respect only strength and violence. That human hasn't demonstrated either. What has she demonstrated? Jotaro asked. Cinna's instruments recalibrated, scanning the emotional resonance between Ava and the cubs. Her expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally something like awe. Care. She's demonstrating care, and they're there responding to it. How is that possible? It shouldn't be. Death cubs evolved in an environment of constant lethality. Their entire behavioral matrix is built on survival through aggression. They have no evolutionary framework for processing protective nurturing from a non-parent. Sinara adjusted her instruments, but the bond signatures I'm reading, they're treating her like a pack leader. No more than that, like a teacher. She is a teacher, Zelia pointed out. But they shouldn't know that. They shouldn't care. Humans and Vraxians don't share evolutionary history. Our brain structures are completely different. There's no biological basis for this kind of cross-species emotional resonance. Below, Ava had apparently finished her negotiation. She stood up, shouldering her backpack. Again, okay guys, time to go home. Your planet needs you. The cubs didn't move. She's not going to succeed, Thexar predicted. Death cubs don't follow verbal commands. They barely follow pheromone-based instinct protocols. Ava put her hands on her hips, a gesture that somehow conveyed both affection and mild exasperation across species. Boundaries, come on, don't make me use my teacher voice. One of the smaller cubs sat immediately. Good boy, Ava said, and the cub's bioluminescence brightened. Did that cub just respond to positive reinforcement? Sinara's voice had gone completely flat. Death cubs don't have reward response neural pathways. They function purely on instinct and hunger. Clearly they have them now, Rahil muttered. Ava pointed at each cub in turn. Sit. They sat They stayed though there. Bioluminescence flickered with what Sonara's instruments registered as reluctance. I'll come visit Ava. Promised, but you have to go home first. Can you do that for me? The largest cub moved close to Ava and very carefully pressed its massive head against her chest. The gesture was unmistakable. Affection, farewell. Trust. Ava wrapped her arms around its head and hugged it. She's hugging it. The Zarin shouted, that's a threat. Display position. It should be ripping her throat out, but the cub just rumbled that same impossible sound from earlier and stepped back. One by one the other cubs approached, received their farewell embrace, and returned to formation. Then, as suddenly as they'd appeared, they vanished. No light show, no portal signature. They simply ceased to exist. In that space, the central hub was empty, except for one human teacher adjusting her backpack and checking her tablet for her next class schedule. The observation deck erupted in chaos. Where did they go? How did they teleport without energy? Signatures. Someone scanned for residual traces. There are no traces there. Just gone. Jarrow slumped against the viewport. Someone get that human up here now before the entire scientific community loses their collective minds. Too late, R. Hill said, watching as at least 3 researchers began arguing about whether to rewrite the fundamental principles of xenobiology or simply declare mass hallucination. Ava looked up at the observation deck and waved again. She had absolutely no idea she just shattered 10,000 years of established science. Ava arrived at the observation deck looking mildly concerned about missing her next class. The assembled scientific minds of the galaxy stared at her like she just walked through a wall, which, considering what they'd witnessed, seemed less impossible than what had actually happened. Hi, she said, offering a small wave. Am I in trouble? Because I really didn't mean to cause a problem. Those guys just showed up. Sit down, please, Jotaro said, managing to sound almost calm. We need to understand what just happened. Okay, but I have algebra in like 5 minutes. This is more important than algebra. Sonara cut in, then paused. I can't believe I just said that. Education is the foundation of civilization, but this, what you just did, this is bigger. Ava sat, setting her backpack carefully beside her chair. Every scientist in the room tracked the vert movement like it might explode. Let's start simple, Rahil said, his instrument still recalibrating from what they'd witnessed. Those were Vraxian death cubs, the most lethal predators in known space. How did you know they wouldn't kill you? They weren't trying to kill me, Ava said, confused. They were protecting my bag. Why your bag? Ava looked at her worn purple backpack like the answer was obvious. It's my work bag. It has everything I need for my students. Lesson plans, supplies, snacks for kids who forget lunch, band-aids for scraped knees, books for different reading levels. She shrugged. It's important. It's children's supplies, Thixarin said slowly. Nothing valuable by galactic standards, nothing worth protecting. It's valuable to me, Ava corrected gently. I've been teaching for 15 years. You learn pretty quick that the little things matter. A kid shows up hungry. You need snacks. Someone's having a hard day. You need the right book to help them escape for a while. A student gets hurt. You fix it. She patted the backpack fondly. This bag represents everything I do to take care of my kids. Sonara's instruments began displaying readings that made her secondary eyes Widen, the Cubs responded to your emotional projection, humans broadcast. Emotional significance at frequencies. We're still mapping, you weren't just carrying a bag, you were carrying concentrated care. I mean, yeah, Ava looked around at the assembled experts. Isn't that normal? Not at those levels. Sin said most species compartmentalize. We can care about things, but humans seem to invest emotional weight into physical objects connected to their caring. That backpack isn't just supplies. It's a physical manifestation of your protective instincts toward your students. Death Cubs are pure instinct. The Zarin added, his certainty crumbling into hypothesis. They operate on the most primal levels of behavior. When those thieves threaten something you'd invested with protective emotional significant, the Cubs sensed it. Our Hill finished. They're predators, but they're also young, adolescented. They responded to the most primal signal in the universe. Protect the young, but my students aren't even here. Ava protested. Doesn't matter, Senora said, her instruments painting emotional resonance patterns in the air. You carry that protective intent with you. It radiates from you. The Cubs didn't see a backpack being threatened. They sensed a caregiver's tools being attacked. They responded the only way they know how. Absolute defense. Korvax's hologram flickered to life. The war archive having monitored the entire conversation. Our Cubs spent 3 years in killing frenzy. Specifically because they're learning to survive. They're aggressive because they're afraid, constantly afraid. Everything is a threat when you're young and powerful but still learning. And then they met someone who wasn't afraid of them, Ava said softly, someone who just treated them like they were good. The observation deck fell silent. You taught them, Jotaro said finally. In less than an hour you taught Death Cubs that not everything is a threat, that protection can come from care instead of violence. They were just babies being defensive. Ava said you can't punish that. You redirect it, show them better options. She checked her tablet again. Speaking of which, I really need to get to class. Is there anything else? Yes, Korvax said. Would you be willing to visit Vreya? Our Cub sanctuaries have mortality rates of 60% because the Cubs are too aggressive to care for safely. If you could teach our handlers what you just showed us. Sure, Ava said. Easily. I've got summer break in 3 months. I could swing by. She said it like she was agreeing to water a neighbor's plants, not revolutionize the care of the galaxy's most dangerous species. One more thing, Sonara said. How did you know they'd leave when you asked them to? Ava smiled. Because I promised to visit, and keeping promises is important. She stood, gathering her backpack. Kids need to know you mean what you say, so do Death Cubs. Apparently, she left the observation deck, already reviewing her algebra lesson plans. Behind her, the galaxy's greatest scientific minds sat in stunned silence, watching a teacher disappear around the corner. We need to reclassify humans immediately, Sonara said finally. As what? Chero asked. Universal apex caregivers, she replied. Because apparently even extinction level predators will sit and behave for someone who genuinely cares. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session 6 hours later. Representatives from 400 species filled the grand chamber, their collective confusion generating enough ambient noise to overwhelm the translation matrices. Chitaro stood at the central podium. His official report hovering in. Holographic display above him, in. Summary: 4 Vraxian death cubs. Manifested on Station Helix 7. Established protective formation around. A human teacher's backpack, responded to. Verbal commands, demonstrated affection towards said human and departed. Peacefully when asked, 0 casualties. 0 property damage, 0 precedent in 10,000 years of recorded xenobiological data, impossible, declared the Christian ambassador. Their crystalline form, refracting light in patterns of dismissal. I have footage. Jotaro replied and played it. The chamber fell silent as they watched of a hug a death cub goodbye. Motion to reclassify human proximity protocols for all predator species, announced the Vraxian delegation. If death cubs respond to human emotional projection, we must assume other apex predators will as well. Seconded came voices from a dozen species simultaneously. Motion to formally request human educators at xenobiological facilities across the galaxy. Korvax added, our cub mortality rates are unacceptable if humans can teach them non-aggressive protective behaviors, approved pending human consent, the council chair declared. Further research into human emotional broadcasting is now a Class A scientific priority. The votes came quickly after that. New protocols, new classifications, new understandings of how the galaxy worked when humans were present on Station Helix 7. None of this affected Ava's afternoon schedule. She stood at the front of her classroom, a diverse collection of young aliens, learning basic mathematics, and wrote equations on the board. Okay, so if x 12 and we're solving for y in this equation, what's our first step? A small crystalline student raised 3 appendages, remove the coefficient through division. Exactly, Ava beamed. Great job, Nexus. Now show me how. Her tablet chimed with an incoming message. She glanced at it during the independent work time. From Galactic Wildlife Emergency Division. Subject: formal request. Dear Ava, we would like to officially request your consultation on 47 separate predator species currently classified as too dangerous for standard interaction protocols. Your work with Vraxian death cubs has opened unprecedented possibilities for cross-species behavioral modification. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to discuss compensation and scheduling. Also, the 4 cubs you met have been asking for you. We didn't know they could ask for things until today. Ava typed a quick response during her students' practice problems. Sounds interesting. Free on weekends and summer break. Do the cubs need anything specific? I can bring more goldfish crackers. Another message appeared. This one from the station commander from Jita. Station commander. Subject: thank you. You probably don't realize what you did today, but you prevented a potential evacuation crisis, revolutionized xenobiology, and made 4 of the galaxy's most feared predators happy for the first time in their lives. The scientific community is rewriting textbooks. The council is restructuring protocols. You called it making some new friends. Thank you for being exactly who you are. Ava smiled, typed back. They were sweet. Tell them I said hi. Then she set her tablet aside and returned to teaching algebra. Okay, everyone, let's review what we learned today about solving for multiple variables. 3 star systems away in the highest reaches of Rixian Command. Korvax reviewed footage of the cubs for the Hundredth time his senior staff surrounded him, equally mesmerized. She hugged them, his second-in-command murmured. She hugged death cubs and they loved it. Korvax replied, watch there. Bioluminescence patterns, that's contentment, joy even, I've never seen. Cubs express joy because they're always terrified, another officer said quietly. Aggressive because they're afraid, and she showed them they don't have to be. Korvax opened a secure channel, get me. The Earth Education Ministry, I want to know if there are more teachers like her, and if they'd be willing to train our handlers. Back on Station Helix 7, Hill sat in his laboratory surrounded by data that contradicted his entire career. Sinara had joined him, her own instruments displaying impossible readings. Humans evolved alongside predators that learned to read their emotional states, Sinara said. Thoughtfully, Earth's domestic animals respond to human care because they co-evolved with human emotional broadcasting, but death cubs never encountered humans before today and still responded, real finished, which means human emotional projection operates on such a fundamental frequency that even species with no shared evolutionary history can perceive it. We're going to need to study this for decades, probably centuries. Rahil pulled up Ava's personnel file. Elementary school teacher, 15 years. Experience, specialty working with difficult students. She does this every day, takes care of young beings who don't always want to cooperate, teaches them patience, kindness, better behaviors. And now she's done it across species boundaries without even trying. They sat in comfortable silence, contemplating the implications. Ava's tablet chimed one more time as she dismissed her class for the day from the 4 cubs via Vraxian handler proxy. Subject: thank you. The handler says we need to say thank you properly. We don't know what that means, but you were nice and we like the crackers. Come visit soon. Ava laughed, showed the message to her departing students. See, good manners matter everywhere. She packed up her backpack, the same worn purple bag that had somehow become the most famous piece of luggage in the galaxy, and headed home. Just another day. Across the stars, the galaxy quietly rewrote itself around the revelation that humanity's greatest superpower wasn't strength or technology, it was caring enough to treat even monsters like they could be better and meaning.